Kena Bridge of Spirits is one of my favorite type of game experiences. It's a game that I really didn't have any interest in, kind of picked it up on a whim when it was on sale. Everybody says it's great, but usually games like that aren't that great, and so I didn't really expect much out of it, and yet at the end I walked away really loving this game. This may be relatable to many of you watching when you clicked on one of my videos not really expecting much and just being blown away by the quality of the content. And if that's you, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Kena is a very personal game as far as the narrative goes. You play as the titular Kena. You are a spirit guide, helping deceased spirits find their way on to the next life. You need to do this because there are some who maybe regret or are angry at what has happened and have hung around essentially as malicious and evil spirits, causing a rot to form on the world. I liked and didn't like the narrative of this game. I liked it in that each section of the game, there's essentially 3 sections, each one focusing on one specific corrupted spirit that you are trying to cleanse and help. I like their stories. Each of their stories is usually well told, sympathetic, emotional. They were always good people who had something bad happen to them, essentially, and weren't able to do what they were trying to do or save the people they were trying to save, things like that. And that's sort of what's caused them to be what they are now. But on the other hand, you have the story for Kena. It's not really fleshed out. She is the main character. She is essentially going on this journey that has nothing to do with these spirits, and they're, I don't want to say in her way, but she needs to help them before she can do what she came to do. And she does not really get the kind of focus or attention that I think she deserves as the main character of the story. So the narrative is trying to kind of gloss over its depth by making you care and feel sympathy towards the people you're trying to help. And I think that's deserved, but at the same time, it kind of distracts you from the fact that Kena is not really going on much of a journey. Now, the type of journey you have is completely up to you. I, for whatever reason, decided to play this game on the hardest difficulty. Well, actually, the reason is there's a trophy associated with it. I love getting me some achievements, so I had to play it on the hardest difficulty setting. And for a while, I thought that was a mistake. This game feels borderline unfair. Enemies can nearly one-shot you. Every individual combat, you can expect to probably die at least once. But the more I played the game and the more I experienced some of, especially its bosses, I actually really came to appreciate the combat. Because it stops this game from being your kind of mindless button masher beat 'em up game like the kind of Batman Arkham games, and turns it into a more almost Dark Souls-like experience where you have to learn the enemies and you have to be really deliberate in the actions that you're taking and understand when you can be aggressive and when you have to be defensive and how to really handle the encounters. And for the most part, the balance is actually really well done, where even if you die a handful of times on a boss, it's not too frustrating. You know why you failed, you know what you did wrong, you know what you have to do next time, you picked up a new attack pattern that they might have or something, and you feel like you're growing and understanding. That said, the final boss of this game on the hardest difficulty is one of the most tedious things I've ever done, probably in my life. The final boss has 5 or 6 phases, and you only get 1 life for all of them. There are no checkpoints, there's no nothing. You have to complete all of these phases, and each phase, you have new attacks to learn. So you spend a couple tries on the first phase, you figure it out. You do the second phase, you die a couple times, but now you have to do the first phase again. So now you're doing the first phase another 5 or 6 times, while you're also failing and learning the second phase. And then you get to the third phase, and so on and so on. It was awful. It was just the worst. Who designed that? I don't know, but you are a mean person. But other than that, the combat, I actually recommend play this game on a harder, you don't have to go all the way to the hardest, but play a harder difficulty when you go through this game. I think it really makes it more enjoyable. I did do a second run through on New Game Plus just to clean up some of the trophies, and I played on the easiest difficulty setting. And I think if I had played this game on one of the more normal settings on my first playthrough, I don't know that I would have even finished it, let alone gone through it a second time on the harder difficulty settings. I think it really does change the game that significantly. Visually, this game was very surprising. In screenshots, and if you look at the main character model, it looks kind of like a cartoony sort of game. But the world itself is so beautifully detailed. The particle effects, the colors, the lighting. This is just a gorgeous game to play on the PS5. I really enjoyed the music in this game as well. Beautiful soundtrack and backdrop. Gives a nice, almost sense of calm, which is good when you're kind of going through some of the more frustrating combat scenarios. The one complaint I have with this game, and you may think it's a nitpick, it genuinely took me out of the game, is the facial animations on Kina specifically. She almost looks sassy when she's helping these spirits. It's juxtaposed with the spirit itself, usually when you finally do take down the corrupted spirit, and that's when Kina makes those facial expressions that are just really like, I don't know, it's like out of a Marvel movie, you know, that kind of like smirking type thing. And then it cuts right into a cutscene where you see the struggle and the dejectedness of this person you're helping because they're at their lowest point and dying and failing in their mission to like save their friends or their village or whatever. And it's just so jarring. Again, in the grand scheme of things, not a huge thing. It only happens a few times in the game. It just happens at the worst possible moments in the narrative that it's just such a stark contrast, and it really took me out of what should have been a very emotional peak in that part of the story. Overall, I really do think Kina lives up to the hype that it's gotten. It is a emotional journey, a beautiful game to play through, and one that is very challenging on the higher difficulty settings, with mostly fulfilling and rewarding combat. It will feel unfair sometimes, especially that last boss, but I do think it's worth pushing through to really add to the overall game. I think playing on the easier difficulties would make combat essentially a chore and get in the way of the story that you're trying to see, whereas on the harder difficulties, it makes it a part of the journey that Kina is on, and you grow with her as you learn how to play the game and master its combat. For a final rating, I would give the presentation a 4.5 out of 5, the story a 3.5 out of 5, and the gameplay a 4 out of 5, with a final rating of a 4 out of 5, and for value, I would say it's worth it. This game is worth picking up. But what do you think? Is Kina overrated? Let me know in the comments down below. Did you play it on the harder difficulty settings? Do you agree with me? Did you think the easier difficulty settings were fine? I'd love to hear about that as well. What game should I review next? I don't know. You tell me. I will do whatever just to make you like the video. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all with the next video.